Unit 5, Characteristic of Restoration Age. Literature produced in Restoration period is also known as the Augustan Age, the Neoclassical period, the Enlightenment, and Age of Reason. Restoration literature is the English literature written during the historical period commonly referred to as English Restorations. It's from 1660 to 1689. Some literary historians divided this literary movement into three parts. The Restoration Age, 1616 to 1700, introducing the comedy of manner, a play about the manners and conventions of highly sophisticated aristocratic society. Augustan Age, 1700 to 1750, introducing the poetry of personal explorations and serious development of novel, melodrama, and satire. The Age of Johnson, 1750 to 1798, or the Age of Sensibility, was transitional period between neoclassical and romanticism, introducing, contrary to the Age of Reason, emotional qualities. Political History 1. Period begins with the restorations of monarchy in 1660, beginning Charles II from his exile in France. He brings with him the indulgent and artistic way of Louis court. Two distinct political parties resulted, the Whigs and Tories. Whigs wanted to limit the royal authorities. Tories supported absolute royal authority. James II, brother of Charles II, takes throne and is voted out by Parliament due to his highly Catholic way. The Glorious or Bloodless Revolutions is reference to the lack of violence needed to the change the throne from Catholic James II to his Protestant daughter Mary and her husband William. Shortly after James II abdictions of the throne, the Bill of Rights limiting the power of the king, the Parliament passed an act forbidding Catholics to rule. George I of Hanover, Germany, took the throne in 1714 when his cousin Anne, daughter of William and Mary, died, ending the rule of the Sword and beginning the rule of his House of Hanover. George I and his son George II did not speak English and relied heavily on their advisors, establishing the rule of England's first prime ministers, Richard Walpole for George I and William Pitt for George II. Under George I and George II and their prime ministers, the British thrived, winning the 7 Years of War, uh, the French and Indian War, and adding the French, Canada, and Indian to empire. In 1760, the George III became the first British born Hanover monarch, although he was less effective than his father and grandfather because his English was reliable. He used his prime minister less and is held responsible for loss of America colonies. Theme: superiority of the intellect. The philosophers claim that humans have an ability to perfect themselves in society and that the state has potentials to be an instrument of that progress. Part of the criticism of the existing government was that it impeded such progress in its refusal to surrender power or resource to the people so that they could take control of their lives. Philosophers laminated the social conditions of contemporary English and French but they remained confident that its peoples could attain happiness and improve living standards. Armed with their concept, fortified by the science and reason, philosophers attacked the Christian traditions and dogmas, denouncing religious persecutions and championing the ideas of religious tolerance. At the center of the belief in the superiority of the intellect was enlightenment, reactions against the tradition authority, namely the church and ruling class. The philosophers claimed that rather than depend on these authorities for physical, spiritual, and intellectual needs, individuals could provide for themselves such needs by using their minds and demanding morality of themselves and others. People could actually change their reality for the better. This idea is even evident in Rousseau, the social contract, and in the declarations of independence. The basic goodness of humankind is another theme. The philosopher maintained that the people were initiately and innately good and that society and the civilizations were to be blamed for their corruptions because people are good, they are fully capable of ruling themselves and collectively working towards the welfare of all. The Ruzi asserts this in social contract as he explains that despite individual difference in priorities, peoples as whole will make the decision for common good. In Emile, Ruzi applies that idea of the educations of a child, demonstrating that purpose of education is not to correct a child or mold the child to exhibit a certain set of characteristics, but rather to draw out the child's unique gift and goodness. Not all enlightenment writers emphasize the man's inherent goodness. However, in Candide, the Volitaires provides numerous examples of humanity, cruelty, and abuse of power. Once the characters are living peaceful on farm outside of civilization, they seems to be less violent, but theme of humankind's goodness is diminished here. The style, rhetoric. Over the course of enlightenment, there exist two clearly opposing schools of thoughts concerning the rhetoric, the traditions of Renaissance, largely influenced by the works of Peter Ramas. Held over into the early part of movement, Ramas attacked the Aristotle's views and rhetoric a dialect should be interacted, indicating that though they may have been used in conjunctions in the past, they should be disengaged. Ramus advocated a linear style bereft of embellishment so that scientific and philosophical writing might be better representations of truth. This straightforward approach adheres naturally to the rational thoughts and methodological observations promoted by Enlightenment. However, while this rhetorical convention was becoming less popular, another was quickly gaining ground. Near the end of the Enlightenment, the belletristic movement was in a full swing. Works such as Lectures on Rhetorics and Bell Letters in 1783 by the Huxley and Philosophy of Rhetoric 1776 by George Campbell were published. Both authors embraced the ideas of using elegance, beauty, and emotions to all want to communicate with most advantage to his or her audience. The word belletristic comes from belles, letter French from literature, which is literature that is appreciated not just for its content but for its beauty as well. Satire, next style here exhibit. Although there are few stylistic consistency among the work of this age, the fiction of the period is almost always satirical. Satire is an indirect way of commenting on social or political issue. Satire reveals how people and things are not what they seem on the surface, and readers can often identify what aspects of society is being ridiculed. Satire allowed the philosopher to get some of their writing past government censors despite its harsh criticisms of state quo. The number of censors increased in the France during the Enlightenment because of radical new ideas being put forth. When writers use satire, however, censors either missed the point of writing or were unable to make convincing case for suppression. Satire also serves as a witty way to criticize. Enlightenment writers were often clever and sarcastic, and their works tended to attract an intelligent readership. A common satire technique was to create a character that was stranger to a country because the character is naive and unfamiliar with the local society. The characters may confuse by the society or find fault with it. These characters are generally ignorant or silly, making their fault finding seems equally ignorant or silly. The satiric irony, however, is that the character is the author's mouthpiece for pointing out the absurd and unjust in his society. With the people, the characteristic of the age, with the people generally looking more closely at the part they play in the society. The main theme of the neoclassical period was restraint and order. Each person was expected to do what was proper and to show that he or she has got taste. The idea being that, given the flawed nature of mankind, putting some limits or what some said or did were better than trying and failing at the outrageous. Became very important to prove that someone had a decent level of intelligence. Writers often use their works not only to express the readers, rulers about the etiquette and decorum, but also to demonstrate brilliant skills of wit. Other characteristics of the age include limitations of classical form, artificial and aristocratic society, sophisticated behavior, style is polite, urbane, and witty, instructive and entertaining, restrained in passions and personal expressions, ideals, order, logic, accuracy, correctness, and decor. Genre, the very important and popular genre. They emphasize on order, reason, ethic, and which made the certain style of literature more popular than other. Diaries, essays, letters, and first-person narratives were extremely successful because they concentrated on what a single person thought or accomplished, which was in the line with the neoclassical idea of analyzing and reforming a person's social role. Moral fables were a favorite, as well as were paradise, and the novel in various styles developed rapidly, becoming a main entertainment for women in the home. The rhymed couplet, specifically, especially the heroic couplet, dominated poetry, and in theatre, audience flocked to sentimental comedy, comedies of manner, and heroic dramas. The representative writers, one of the most influential neoclassical writers was John Milton. Paradise Lost. Much of his work reflected political issues in England. And next, John Dryden, uh, especially called as a Glorious John, was also a major force during Restoration period, working on both the plays and poetry to such a degree that entire first sections of the period, sometimes called as Age of Dryden. Two of the most famous works are To My Lord Chancellor and Marriage Lalmore. Alexander Pope was an Augustan poet. He made more translating works such as the but some established himself with his own piece, His pastoral and an essay on criticisms are probably the best known of his writing, and scholars recognized him for his comment of heroic couplet. For satire, John Shift spanned from 1667 to 1745 is a champion, although he wrote poetry as well as prose. His best known is the later. Many of his works were originally published under the pseudonym, including M.B. Dapier and Isaac Bigstaff. He is an another of well-known novel Gulliver's Travel. Next, along with Samuel Richardson, Daniel Defoe, the time of period that is 1660 to 1731, the leading pioneers, and they developed English novels. They are notable for the content of their writings, but also because of sheer numbers of them. Some expected says that at least 500 different pamphlets, books, and other writings are Defoe's. Perhaps the one out of all these that the people still know well today is Robinson Crusoe. The political writing brought the troubles at the time, which Defoe even spent some time in prison. Samuel Johnson, 1709 to 1784, a great writer. His major contribution is a dictionary of English language, which the people use well over the century, the Oxford English Dictionary, and major accomplishment and the development standardization of English well versed.